It happened at exactly 11:42 p.m. My bedroom was dark, the house was quiet, and I was half asleep when my phone lit up on the nightstand. At first I ignored it, probably a spam alert or a late promotional email, but then I saw the name on the screen, my lawyer, and the message, just 2 words, all caps, no punctuation, felt like they punched straight into my chest. Call now, not call when you can, not emergency, please respond. Just that sharp, urgent command, the kind you only send when something is already on fire and you're trying to stop the person on the other end from walking into the flames. My lawyer is not the texting type. I've known him for years. The man still prints his emails. If he's messaging me at midnight, something is catastrophically wrong. I grabbed the phone, suddenly wide awake, heart pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my neck. A dozen possibilities flashed through my mind. Maybe the firm discovered an issue with a project contract. Maybe something happened with my insurance. Maybe a relative fell ill. But then I noticed the part that chilled me. He sent the message not 15 seconds earlier, meaning he expected me to see it immediately, meaning whatever was happening couldn't wait. I didn't call him right away. I just sat there on the edge of my bed staring at those 2 words, feeling the weight of dread pressing into my ribs. I felt like I was balanced on the tip of a cliff, and all it would take was one phone call to send me tumbling into something I couldn't climb out of. Before I take you with me into what that night became, let me tell you who I am, because context matters in a story like this. My name is Daniel. I'm 57 years old, and I've spent the better part of my life designing homes for other people as a residential architect. Blueprints, foundations, structures, stability. My entire career has been about creating safe places for families. Funny, isn't it? How you can spend decades building stability for others while your own family becomes a place you barely recognize. I'm divorced, have been for years. And I have one child, my daughter Mia, who's 28 now. She grew up bright, talented, quick-witted, impossibly charming. The kind of kid teachers adore and relatives brag about. She and I used to be close, really close. Baking cookies before school, late-night Lego builds, little rituals that stitched us together in ways I thought were permanent. But the last year, something shifted. First subtly, the way autumn shifts into winter, barely noticeable until the coldness is everywhere. She became distant, edgy, sometimes sarcastic in a way that didn't feel playful anymore. There were moments when I'd look at her and think, she's angry, but I don't know why. I tried to chalk it up to adulthood, stress, relationships, work. Everyone goes through phases, but this wasn't a phase. This was pressure building beneath a surface I didn't know was cracking. And what I learned that night, because of that text, was that the distance wasn't accidental. It wasn't moodiness or stress or the natural drifting that happens between a parent and an adult child. It was groundwork, carefully laid, purposeful, strategic. It was the kind of distance you create not because you want space, but because you're planning something that requires emotional detachment to pull off. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that my lawyer had texted me like his hands were shaking while he typed. And the message wasn't just urgent. It felt warning-like. A flare shot into the sky. I took a breath, squeezed the phone tighter, and dialed his number. As it rang, my stomach knotted. I could feel myself bracing instinctively, the way you do when you know a punch is coming, but you can't stop it. He answered on the first ring. No greeting, no small talk, just my name, spoken in a tone I had never heard from him before, tight, grim, almost apologetic. Daniel, we need to talk. It's about your daughter. And right then, before he even explained the details, I felt the air drain from my lungs because when a lawyer calls you at midnight to talk about your child, there are only a few possibilities, none of them good. But the truth he was about to tell me wasn't just not good, it was devastating and worse, This wasn't something happening to her, it was something she was deliberately doing to me. The moment my lawyer said my daughter's name, everything inside me went still, not silent, still, like my heartbeat forgot its rhythm, like my mind suddenly emptied itself of every imagination except the worst possible one. I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut me off gently, as if he knew that letting me ask questions would only make everything harder. Daniel, before I explain, I need you to understand something. None of this happened overnight. That sentence alone carried a weight I wasn't prepared for, because it meant this wasn't a sudden emergency. It was a long, quiet storm I hadn't noticed building. And that's where this story really begins. Not with the midnight text, but months earlier, maybe even a full year. Back then the signs were small, forgettable, easy to dismiss, little disagreements that didn't feel like fights, just friction. Times when Mia would roll her eyes at something I said or sigh like my very existence was exhausting her. Moments when she'd ask about my finances, but in that overly casual way where the casualness itself feels like a mask. Questions like, are you still keeping your retirement account separate? Or, do you have anyone listed as your emergency contact besides me? Or, what would happen to the house if something happened to you? At the time, I shrugged them off as concern, curiosity, maybe even responsible planning. She was getting older. Maybe she was thinking about the future. Maybe she wanted to understand what she might one day inherit. But there were other moments, sharper ones. Times when she'd get irritated if I didn't immediately answer her calls or if I made a decision about my own life without running it by her. That bothered me. She had never acted like that before. There was a possessiveness in her tone sometimes, subtle but unmistakable, almost like she was already assuming authority she didn't have. One night we had dinner at her apartment. I complimented her on the place. It was new, modern, way above what I thought her salary could comfortably support. She laughed and said she had plans, and that soon money won't be a concern. I remember raising an eyebrow, asking if she had gotten a promotion. She didn't answer, just smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Later, when we talked about my work, she asked why I still bothered taking on clients. You've saved enough, she said. Honestly, you should retire. You're not getting younger. It sounded innocent on the surface, but the tone, something in it felt like a warning. Like she was trying to push me toward something rather than suggest it. I chalked it up to stress again. Busy schedule, maybe relationship issues she didn't want to tell me about. Kids, no matter how old, don't always share what's really bothering them. But the biggest red flag came after I had a minor fall in the backyard. Nothing serious, just a slip on wet grass, a scraped elbow, a bruised hip. But when I mentioned it casually over the phone, she reacted in a way I didn't expect at all. She became excited, too interested, asking whether I'd gone to the doctor, whether I'd hit my head, whether anyone witnessed it. She told me to be careful at your age, then brought up again that I should think about putting someone in charge of my medical decisions just in case. Something about that conversation stuck with me for days. The tone, the insistence, the way she steered the topic toward legal responsibility like it was a personal mission. But still, I didn't see it. I didn't connect the dots. I didn't imagine my own daughter could have an agenda. We're taught to trust our children, not blindly, but deeply, instinctively. You want to believe the best in them, even when the signs say otherwise. Looking back, the truth was staring me dead in the face. Mia wasn't just growing distant. She was calculating, observing, gathering information, laying down the foundation for something I couldn't yet understand. And the most dangerous thing? She did it so subtly that I never felt the shift while it was happening. Later, after the midnight call, my lawyer would show me timelines and messages and documents, pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know was being assembled. But in the moment, months before the explosion, all I felt was confusion, concern, a heavy, uncomfortable sense that something was wrong, but not wrong enough to confront. That's how betrayal starts, not with a knife, not with a shout, but with a whisper of discomfort you learn to ignore. If I had paid attention sooner, maybe things wouldn't have spiraled the way they did. Maybe I would have seen what she was slowly becoming. Maybe I would have realized she wasn't distancing herself from me. She was positioning herself above me. And at that point, without knowing it, I was already losing ground. My lawyer didn't waste time. The moment I said hello, he spoke with a tightness I had never heard from him before. Daniel, your daughter is preparing legal steps to gain control of your assets. For a second, I honestly thought I misheard him. My brain refused to put those words together in a sentence that made sense. My daughter? Mia? Planning something like that? It sounded impossible, like he had mixed up files, mixed up clients, mixed up lives. But he repeated it slower this time, as if he knew it would hit like a blow. She's been trying to obtain authority over your accounts, property, and decision-making, and she's been doing it quietly. I sat there in the dark, stunned. My throat tightened. What are you talking about? Authority how? He explained. She has been consulting with another firm about securing a durable power of attorney. Hearing that phrase out loud made my stomach clench. A power of attorney wasn't some casual form. It wasn't a routine document. It was near total control. If she had it, she could move my money, sign contracts, handle my medical decisions, even sell my house without asking. Why would she be doing that? I asked. But the question came out thin, like I barely recognized my own voice. He didn't sugarcoat it. She's been creating a paper trail to justify it. I asked what that meant. I didn't want to, but I had to know. Notes about you being forgetful, he said quietly. Comments about you struggling with finances. Meetings where she implied you might be developing cognitive decline. I felt heat rise in my chest. Anger, yes, but beneath it, something deeper, something like grief. Because she wasn't just trying to take control, she was building a story to support it. A story where I was the helpless one, the confused one, the one who needed her to step in and protect me. She's exaggerating small things, he continued. A double-paid bill, a misplaced envelope, missed calls. None of it proves anything, but she's presenting it like a pattern. A pattern. That word stung. She was painting me into a version of myself that didn't exist. I tried to speak, but he kept going gently but firmly. Daniel, she also met with advisors about transferring your home title early. She's claiming it would simplify your estate. My house, my home, the place I built, lived in, and poured decades of work into. Hearing that she was trying to position herself as the rightful owner while I was still living in it made the room feel suddenly smaller. And there's more, he said. She's been asking for documents from offices you used years ago, old account statements, trust paperwork, copies of medical information. She's piecing together what she needs. I felt myself sinking, breath shallow, pulse loud in my ears. For how long? At least 6 months, he said. Possibly longer. 6 months, while we had dinner. While she smiled across the table, while she hugged me on holidays. She was already working on this. I thought of all the odd conversations she'd started, the ones about my retirement, my health, my future planning, the way she reacted when I mentioned my small fall in the yard, the sudden pushiness about medical directives, the questions about emergency contacts. It all clicked into place with terrifying clarity. She wasn't being thoughtful. She was preparing evidence to justify taking power. I pressed my hand against my forehead. Why didn't she just talk to me? I would have listened. He was quiet for a moment. Then he answered with a heaviness I could feel through the phone, because talking wouldn't give her control, Daniel. And that's what she's after. It felt like the floor dropped out beneath me, not because of the legal threat, but because of what it meant emotionally. My own daughter had turned me into a project, a target, an obstacle. I thought the space between us was emotional distance. Now I realized it was strategic distance. Her separating herself so she could act without guilt. I whispered, What do I do? We protect your rights, he said. But first, you need to understand the scale. She has been building a case. And if she completes it, she could move fast. The worst part of all of this wasn't the documents or the consultations or the planning. It was the fact that she had done it, believing she'd get away with it, believing I'd never see it coming, believing she already knew how this story would end. But she didn't know my lawyer had caught it early. She didn't know her timeline had just collapsed. She didn't know I was about to fight back. And in that moment, the betrayal finally sank in. Not as an idea, not as a fear, but as a truth. My daughter had been preparing to take my life out from under me, and she almost succeeded. I stayed silent on the phone for what felt like a full minute. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I simply couldn't form words. It was as if my mind needed time to rearrange itself around a truth I never imagined I'd face. My lawyer finally broke the silence. Daniel, listen to me. You are not powerless in this, but we need to act quickly. Even then, a part of me didn't want to believe what he had uncovered. Parents aren't designed to think of their child as someone who would plan something like this. Every instinct in me resisted the idea, but denial wasn't going to undo anything. The evidence was there. The intentions were clear. I forced myself to ask, what exactly do I need protection from? His answer was immediate. If she gets the authority she's aiming for, she could control your bank accounts, your property, your medical decisions. She could restrict your access to your own funds. She could sell your home. She could sign documents in your name, and once it's done, reversing it is extremely difficult. That was enough to knock the last bit of denial out of me. So what do? I asked. First, he said, we need to secure every essential document. Bank authorizations, account passwords, titles, identification, anything that could be used to prove you're unfit to handle your own affairs. He paused. And Daniel, you must not tell her we're doing this. Not yet. A knot tightened in my stomach. Keeping secrets from my own daughter felt unnatural, wrong, even cruel. But I understood why he said it. If she knew I was onto her, she might accelerate her attempts or move everything to another legal office entirely. He continued outlining steps, simple but firm. Update my medical directives to show I was fully competent. Secure copies of my financial records. Document any interactions that could be twisted into her narrative. And most importantly, make sure she had no access to anything she could manipulate. I asked him the question I was afraid of hearing the answer to. Is she trying to make it look like I'm incapable? He didn't hesitate. Yes. That word hit me like a physical impact. I swallowed hard, but I'm perfectly capable. I know, he said gently, and that's why she's trying to assemble evidence. A single incident isn't enough. She needs a pattern. She's been collecting little things here and there, waiting for the right moment to present them. My mind ran through every small mistake I had made in the past few months. A late payment, misplacing my keys, forgetting the name of a restaurant, normal human errors, everyday flaws, nothing close to unfitness, but hearing how she twisted them into ammunition felt like being stabbed by your own shadow. I asked him what he thought her motive was. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, it was slow, careful. Daniel, sometimes people convince themselves they deserve something long before they act on it. If she believes your assets should be hers, the rest becomes justification. It was an explanation, not an excuse. but it still felt like being hit in the chest. He then said something that chilled me more than anything else that night. She might be waiting for an event she can use as proof, a fall, a medical scare, anything that looks like vulnerability. Once she has that, she could file quickly. Suddenly, her reaction to my backyard fall made horrifying sense. The way she asked too many questions, the way she wanted details, the way her voice practically sharpened with interest when I mentioned it. She was looking for her moment. I rubbed my face with my hand. How close is she? She's gathering the last pieces. If we hadn't caught this now, she could have acted within weeks, possibly sooner. Weeks. My life, everything I'd built, everything I relied on, could have been taken from me within weeks. My lawyer's voice softened. Daniel, this isn't just paperwork. She has been structuring a narrative about you without your knowledge. We need to build a stronger, truer narrative in your favor. Your competence, your stability, your independence. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Tell me what to do. He laid out a plan, step by step, logical, solid. A counteraction to every move she had set in motion. Legal protections I could put in place immediately. Documentation I needed to gather. Professionals I should update. People who could verify my mental clarity, my capability, my health. The more he spoke, the more something inside me shifted, from heartbreak to resolve. She had planned her moves, now I had to plan mine, not to attack her, not to hurt her, but to defend myself. When the call finally ended, I sat in the dark for a long time, phone still in my hand, staring at the wall as night stretched into early morning. I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal. I was preparing for a confrontation, and deep down, I knew it was inevitable. I didn't sleep after the call. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off, replaying every moment of the past year, every odd question, every uneasy look, every moment I dismissed as stress or distance. When the sun finally came up, I knew I couldn't wait. I had to face her before she made her move. I texted her that morning, "Come by after work, need to talk." Her reply came instantly. "Everything okay?" That one line hurt more than anything else, because she said it like she wasn't planning anything, like she hadn't been quietly constructing a legal claim to my entire life. She arrived a little after 6. She walked in smiling, dropped her bag on the counter, and hugged me tightly. I stood stiff in her arms, unsure what was real anymore. When she pulled back, she looked concerned. "Dad," she said, you look exhausted." I gestured for her to sit. "We need to talk." She sat slowly, sensing the shift. "What's going on?" I didn't ease into it. "I talked to my lawyer last night." She blinked once. Nothing dramatic, but enough that I noticed. "About what?" "You," I said. "About the documents you've been requesting, the consultations with another firm, the power of attorney paperwork, the conversations where you implied I'm losing my memory." Her face didn't fall. It hardened. "Dad, it's not what you think." "Then tell me." My voice cracked. "Tell me why you've been preparing legal steps to take over everything I own." She inhaled sharply. "I was preparing for emergencies. You live alone. You're getting older. I didn't want something bad to happen and leave everything a mess." "That's not preparation," I said. "That's control." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did," I said softly. "You've been collecting incidents, small, normal mistakes, and shaping them into a story about me, a story where I'm incapable. Why?" Her eyes flicked up, sharp. "Because you don't plan for anything. Because you avoid difficult conversations. Because someone has to think about the future." I felt something inside me twist. "So you decided it should be you?" She didn't deny it. I continued, each word heavier than the last. "You were trying to get authority over my finances, over my decisions, over my home without telling me. What future were you planning, Mia? One where I couldn't speak for myself? That's not fair, she snapped. I wasn't going to use anything unless I had to. But you were preparing to, I said. You were waiting for an excuse. She flinched at that, and I knew it was true. My fall in the yard, the questions, the sudden interest, it had all been part of her timeline. Why didn't you just talk to me? I asked. Why not say you were worried? Why not ask me to plan things together? Her expression shifted, defensiveness turning into something colder. Because you wouldn't have listened. That's not a reason to go behind my back, I replied. That's a reason to try harder. But instead, you chose the one path that cut me out completely. She rubbed her forehead. You're overreacting. It's not like I was taking anything. You were preparing to take everything, I said. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Silence settled between us, heavy, unmistakable. Finally, I told her what the lawyer advised, that protections were already updated, that she would no longer have access to any information about my accounts, that any attempts to present me as incompetent would be challenged immediately. Her eyes widened, not with guilt, but with anger. You're making this worse. You're acting like I'm some villain. I shook my head slowly. I'm acting like someone who almost lost their entire life without knowing it was happening. She stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. I was trying to help, she said, but there was no conviction in it. One day, you'll see that. She walked to the door, paused, and without turning around said quietly, You're making a mistake. Then she left. The house felt different the moment the door clicked shut, emptier but also clearer. I'd always imagined that the greatest pain a parent could feel was losing their child. I never imagined losing trust in them could hurt even worse. In the days that followed, we barely spoke. A few cold texts, a few strained attempts to sound normal. But something had broken, something deep and fundamental, and we both knew it. I protected my life. She protected her plan, and the cost was the relationship between us. I still don't know whether this rift will close someday or whether it was inevitable the moment she decided my future should belong to her. But I do know this. You can prepare for storms. You can prepare for illness. You can prepare for loss. Nothing prepares you for betrayal from your own child.